In this lesson, we're going to take you through how to manage the Health and Human Services Agency portion of the Incident Resource Inventory System. This is a tool that is owned and overall managed by the Office of Emergency Services here in Yolo County, and it's managed for every single one of the Joint Emergency Management Services partners. So that's the county, the 4 cities, Yolo County Housing, and the tribal nation, Yotedihiwintin Nation. A lot of data for volunteer organizations and special districts is also housed in this database, as it allows us to find resources or personnel that have the right skill sets during an emergency. With that comes the tracking of training and skills or past experiences that certain county personnel have, so that we can find them when we need somebody who maybe has worked a large fire before. To get started, you will need to know the data entry URL for IRIS. It is external to the county firewall initially to log into the system. That way you can get to it from any computer that has internet. It doesn't have to be a computer that's on the county network. So that is the URL that you'll want to be able to either save as a shortcut or just know off the top of your head for doing IRIS data management. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started by going to the portal. I've already got the splash screen up here in my web browser. If you have access to IRIS, then you have a login that you can use that is specific to you. We always ask people not to remember their passwords on a computer, just in case something happens to that computer, you lose it. We don't want your passwords cached in the device's memory. So please write your password down. If you ever need a password change, you can come to the Office of Emergency Services and we can help you with that. So as I mentioned, this is maintained for multiple agencies. This specific lesson is for a county department, so I'm going to stay in the county's portal. And you may not have access to all of these agencies, but if you're giving training to any of them, OES can help you get that training logged for the personnel in that jurisdiction so that they have access to their own records. So as you can see here, we're in the county portal. And the thing that we're going to be teaching you in this lesson is really how to manage personnel data. Well, there will be other lessons on resource data later. We actually have all of the county employees in here. We try to maintain that listing with data exports from the human resources system. So we try to input new personnel as we're made aware that they've been hired by the county, no matter what department they work for. And then we also try to decommission personnel who have left the county's employment. We never ever delete records from this database, because sometimes the personnel move to another jurisdiction, so we move their records to that portal, or a lot of times personnel will call us asking for reprints of records that we may have on file. So we're going to be dealing with one of our county employees here, and I'm just going to search for their name. You can search for first name or last name in the system. You want to make sure to be careful of first names sometimes, because people like Robert may be called Bob, and that's maybe how they ask to have their certificates listed, so we may not know that they're Bob or Robert are the same individual until we go to enter some data. So just be cognizant of that when you're doing searches. And I'm actually going to take this employee and add something to her profile. If you want to check the employee to see if this is the right person, you're always welcome to hit the view button, and it'll bring things up about her. It brings up the department she works in, her title if we know it, and if you are managing this data, you can change those at any time if personnel move from department to department, or maybe they change titles. That's entirely up to you. We do export phone numbers out of the HR system, usually their desk lines, so it might not be all of their phone numbers, but those are things that you might be able to find in there. We try to associate their supervisor of record with their personnel record if we know it. That could again be blank if we don't know those things here in OES. But the biggest thing we're doing is managing training and experiences, and then we do assign some things called custom attributes to those personnel. So we'll go ahead and go through both of those sections for you. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is check that I have the right person, and if I do, then I want to edit her profile to add more trainings. And we're going to try to add 2 very specific trainings in here. You can see that she already has a list of 12 trainings, and so if I'm in here in the database and I'm looking through the drop downs, I can see that she's actually got quite a few emergency management trainings, some things from FEMA, some things here from the local EOC courses, even an ArcGIS course that she's taken with the GIS division here at the county. So pretty much anytime anybody gives us a training record, we'll try to associate it with their profile, because sometimes we may need somebody who has had a certain training and has knowledge of how to use GIS. We just never know what skills that we may be querying for, because emergencies are different every time. So the first one that I want to enter is an IS 201 course. That's a FEMA online course that she has. And so what I'm going to do is simply go into the training and type the course number. Now you can see when 201 comes up, there's a number of things that have that 201 in them. Some of these that have years in front of them are what we call experiences. So that is something we can associate with somebody's profile to let us know that they went to that event. So if, say, we have a mudslide, we can actually go query for people who went down to help Santa Barbara County, because those are probably the people who have seen that instance before and would be the most help here in Yolo. In this case, I am looking for the actual IS course 201, which does happen to be listed there. We actually take the exact description from FEMA's EMI catalog, and so we will always be using that. We'll always be using the official EMI number. Now, IS courses do not have expiration dates, so we usually don't fill that in, but sometimes we like to know when the person took this last. So the way to get a date on there that isn't an expiration date would be to simply put the date that they took that class. So if I'm looking at the certificates that this individual sent to us in email, I can view that 201 course and see the date that they took it, December 20th, 2019. So that's basically what I want to put on her profile. I can say December 20th, 2019. So at a glance, I can see how old this person's training was. So if they had it 10 years ago, it might not be as relevant as somebody who had it last year, or they might not remember it. That's very handy for us when we're querying for skill sets. Then we also want to associate the actual PDF certificate, or if you don't have a certificate, maybe the training agency doesn't issue them, you can put a sign-in sheet, whatever proves that the person went to that class. So in this case, I have her certificate downloaded on my hard drive, and I'm going to go ahead and choose that file. Now, one glitch that we already know of in Iris is sometimes when you hit save and close, records will be unlinked accidentally. So I always recommend that you actually hit the save button in between every single training ad, and you hit save and close after you've saved the last time. It's kind of an irritating thing, but you will run into less problems if you do it this way than if you just hit save and close and lose the work that you just did. So now if I go into her profile, I should be able to see that 201 class. They don't alphabetize, so it should be towards the bottom here. And so there's the 201 class I added along with its certificate. So if anybody ever needs a certificate reprint, you can come in here and get that straight out of the database. Now the second example that I wanted to show you is actually, if I go in, she also has a class called IS 1300. So if I type that in, you can see that there's no matches found. So that means that that training is not necessarily in the catalog yet. The catalog is quite extensive, but we're adding trainings every day as people take new ones, or FEMA releases new ones, or even we release new ones. So in this case, you could pick this new and simply add the class. You always want to call it the number from the training agency. You always want it to be a training. And then you always want to use the description, which is the title from the training agency. OES pretty much recommends that if you do that, you need to email our office, because we'll update the training database and all of the other portals for the cities and everything to have that course listed as well, so all the training portals match at all times. but you can enter it yourself. You can also email us and let us know that you want us to enter it, and once we enter it, then it'll be added to that drop down and you'll be able to find it. Since it's not in there and I have to enter it into multiple portals, I'm actually going to just remove it so that it's not in there for this example, and I'll enter it later. The other thing I wanted to go over are custom attributes. Custom attributes can be designed for almost anything we want to be able to query on quickly. So here, the Health and Human Services Agency has asked for a custom attribute that identifies their supervisors, managers, and leadership personnel in that department. Be sure that if you're entering one of those people, you actually make sure that you pick that custom attribute for them. Sometimes there will be extra attributes on there, like this NIMS compliant one happens to be one that OES really likes to use to query for NIMS compliance during the annual NIMS cast. And then there's even more. So if this person, say, had a specific licensure, I can come in here and look at the licensure list. Maybe they're an RN, or obviously we don't even have PHN listed there yet because we haven't had anybody request that licensure be added to their profile. So that's always something that you can add. If you want an attribute added to somebody's profile or into the drop-down list, just email OES. We'll be happy to add that to the database for you. So again, just as a precaution, I'm going to hit save before I hit save and close, just to make sure that all of my records are attached properly because of that known quirk in Iris again. And that's really as hard as managing the training is for the personnel within the county or within any of the jurisdictions. If you do have training to enter for jurisdictions, again, just ask OES. We'll be happy to either train you to do that yourself or enter it for you. Now, if you are sifting for a person and you couldn't find them in the database, you do have the create person function available to you at all times. The only thing you have to have is their first and last name. We need their status. If they're currently employed, then they are available. If they have separated with the county, they are decommissioned. Sometimes if they're not trained to be used at the level we need them to be, and this is more in the case of our volunteer personnel, they will be marked as temporarily unavailable until they complete their training. From there, everything else that you put in there is just an added benefit. Agency affiliations help us to sift for data more clearly. Titles help us to know that person's level, and then emails in the county are helpful as well. Anything else on here you can use. You can attach files if they have examples of driver's license or insurance or something that you want associated with them. If you have a headshot, you can put that. You can use all of these however you like. We'll actually end up doing mutual aid readiness and deployment location if they're activated during an emergency. So most of these fields are used to track a person during an emergency. It's really the training and attributes that allow us to sift for very specific skill sets. And if there are credentials that have been issued, then we can add those credentials here. They're usually issued by the state or federal government. And in some cases, we do have a type 4 credential here at County OES. So you can enter new personnel if you can't find them in the catalog, and that's really as hard as it is. For querying for specific things, like one thing, you may find the advanced search to be pretty handy because you can actually come in here and for agency affiliations, if I just search for HHSA, then it'll bring up everybody that has the term HHSA in their agency affiliation. If I want to get more specific and I don't want everybody who's ever worked for HHSA in the past, I can start narrowing my search by saying only the currently employed people and only the ones that work in the service centers. And then I can search again, and my list gets narrower and narrower as I add those parameters. So that's a way to find certain things, sometimes just individual things. Like if I wanted to just find one individual training and get a list of everybody who's, let's say, had a training that has the word 100 in the title, like IS 100. Now, there could be multiple trainings that have that term, kind of like you saw with the 201 class. But I can go in here and search for that one attribute. If you need to search for more than one attribute and you work for the county, it's best to get access to a customized report that we've had made through the Information Technology Division, and it's right here called IRIS report. OES will have to grant you permission to use this report. It's made using Crystal Reports, an SQL server. So if you ever want a different kind of customized report than what we've had IT make for us, they can always add some of those fields. The one that we've had is which organization do they work for and what's the training ID. So we can, instead of only searching for one training at a time, we can actually come in here and search for multiple trainings. So those who have damage assessment, those who are certified floodplain managers, and then maybe have had a very specific IS course. When we hit view that report, this will probably turn up nothing. Oh, it has 2 people on there. So it shows people that have had some of those things. It's not people that have had every single one, just certain ones. So you can see that one of the employees is a certified floodplain manager, while the other one has had the damage assessment purchasing and the 244 class. So this is a good way to use this save button to export into an Excel file so you can make customized charts and compare training levels, usually for department heads or managers that want to compare their training records of their personnel. So this is just a way to get a lot of data rather than just one class. Again, if you want more drop downs added to this, really the people to go to are county IT, who have made this customized report for us. So with that, that's really the end of the Yolo County IRIS training that's specific to the Health and Human Services Agency. If you have any questions on how to use the IRIS database, be sure to call us anytime and we'll be happy to help you.